Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to get started by just welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is what's called our Pali Canon and English study group, where we study the original words of the Buddha in order to help students to understand the path to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind no longer experiences any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these discontent feelings and others are eliminated from the enlightened mind. And the way that you actually get to enlightenment is through training of the mind. So meditation is an important practice that we use in order to move the mind to enlightenment, but it's not the only thing that you would need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So that's why we study the original words of the Buddha, to help students to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. And I'll explain to you guys what the Pali Canon and English study group is later. We're going to actually start with meditation because the mind needs this training. We start off with meditation to help students learn how to meditate and how to train their mind, but then we're going to move into some other things as well after our meditation. So again, welcome to you guys here. Welcome to everyone joining us online. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start is we start with chanting. And if you'd like to learn the chants and see the chants or even chant along, there's laminated sheets over there on the table that you're welcome to help yourself to. Yeah, you guys can get those if you like. You'll see the Pali language that we're actually chanting in the Pali language there. You guys are welcome to help yourself. I see you guys looking at it, but no one's actually moved to get it yet. So yeah, there's the Pali chants over there. And then there's the English translations as well. You'll see those in there. If you read the English translations, what you're going to see is that there's a lot of respect and gratitude and admiration for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha doesn't walk around with ego and arrogance and pride and propping himself up and saying, here, chant these things to me. But instead, if you learn from a teacher how to move to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mental state, and you no longer experience any anger and sadness and frustration, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or didn't expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So I suspect his students created these either during his life or after his death. During the Buddha's lifetime, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. So every 2 weeks, they would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word for word. This is how chanting came about. So there isn't anything mystical or magical about these chants. It's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's none of these kinds of things. It's not even prayer or anything like that. Instead, what you're doing is nowadays it's helping you to ease your mind into meditation, getting more benefit out of the meditation itself. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they were using it in order to commit the teachings to memory, because everything that he taught was oral. The technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. It existed in China, but it hadn't made its way to that part of the world yet. So everything the Buddha taught was oral. So every 2 weeks, they would recite his teachings through chanting as a way to commit them to memory. So this is how you can see that there isn't anything mystical or magical about chanting. Nowadays, we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings. We have books and videos and podcasts and audiobooks and all these kinds of things. So we use chanting as a way to ease the mind into meditation, helping to develop awareness of mind, concentration, and awareness of breath to be able to get some better benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance. You're going to hear me guiding you guys during the meditation. And then after that, we're going to have this period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and everyone joining us online will just all be meditating at the same time. And I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear birds chirping or dogs barking or an occasional car going past. All these sounds are impermanent. If your mind craves permanent silence, then you're going to be discontent. You're going to be frustrated or agitated or annoyed when you're experiencing this impermanence, when there's change in the environment and everything's going to change around you. You're not going to experience permanent quietness. So if your mind craves permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you'll get frustrated or annoyed. But you can just understand that any particular sound is impermanent. So I'm going to guide you during the meditation where you can keep bringing your mind back to the breath and train your mind to just let go and no longer crave permanence. So in terms of body positioning for meditation, Then most people are learning in the seated position, but there's actually 4 positions to meditate in. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these at different times in your practice because they're needed for different reasons. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position just to help you get started. But just keep in mind that there isn't just one way to meditate in terms of your body positioning. Your body is going to need to be whatever's comfortable for you. Everybody's body is a little bit different, so you find what's comfortable for you. So what I'm sharing with you is just guidance to maybe help you along, but you need to find what's comfortable for you. So if you're on the floor, you might sit with some cushions under your rear. This will kind of soften your seat, and then you would like to just lightly cross your legs. If you have them real tight, this can impede the circulation and it can cause pain. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This helps to get the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and allows the circulation to flow. So if this is comfortable for you, you could use that. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, again, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you need to find whatever's comfortable for you. And then the same thing with anyone who's in a chair, or maybe if you're at home, you're on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or something like that. You can just sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm in a chair with my legs crossed, so you could easily sit that way as well. And then the same thing with the hands and arms, you could just put them wherever you're comfortable. It's helpful if the upper body is erect. By having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. This is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you would like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you are real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect where the sternum's up and the shoulders back. This will keep the mind attentive and alert, and it'll also help to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose because your chest will be completely open. Okay, so again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with chanting. I'm going to come in with some guidance. There'll be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where we'll start our class today. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Otang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho วิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind focused on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thoughts, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online as well. Those of you guys in the hallway, you're welcome to come up. We have plenty of space. If you'd like to move up, you're welcome to. Welcome to our class today, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. I'll share some details with you about the temple that help you feel even more comfortable while you're here. Maybe this is your first time here. We're here in our temporary classroom. Our normal classroom is downstairs. We're refurbishing it to make it even better for all the students to be able to come and learn with us. Here in a temporary classroom, we have two bathrooms. We have one here at the first door, and then the very last door in the back by the steps, there's a bathroom there. You're welcome to use it at any time that you like. We even have bathrooms outside. If you go out to the parking lot, you'll see signs that take you around to the main temple bathroom, and you can follow those around to the larger bathrooms over there if you like. We have water and refreshments and things like that over here on the table that is provided by our students. You're welcome to help yourself to anything over there on the table. Just make yourself comfortable and make yourself at home. So the teachings of the Buddha are, as I mentioned, to train the mind to get to this enlightened mental state. Enlightenment is where the mind has been trained, where it's uprooted certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. There's 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered, and then he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to eliminate them and eradicate them from the mind. And when you do so, the mind's going to start performing optimally. You'll notice that the mind no longer experiences any anger or sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these discontent feelings are eliminated from the mind. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the mind. When you uproot these pollutions, you'll notice that the mind is focused, it's concentrated, it has clarity, it has deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. Right now, you might have certain relationships that you're challenged in. You might have bitterness and hostility and harshness in these relationships. This is actually coming from your own mind. As long as you're putting out this bitterness and this hostility, it's going to keep coming back to you in your relationships. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're not even in a bad mood any longer. The causes and conditions that are producing the bad mood have been uprooted and eliminated from the mind. Oftentimes, with our lack of wisdom in the unenlightened state, we think that other people are causing us to be angry. You might firmly believe that right now, that your mom or dad are making you frustrated or irritated, or your brothers and sisters are annoying you, or your coworkers or something like this. But in reality, all of these feelings that you're experiencing are actually coming from your own mind, and this is why you can actually eliminate them. You can eliminate the anger and the sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. You don't need to be stressed and having anxiety. You can actually evolve to the point where your mind is no longer experiencing those things. And it just means that you need wisdom to be able to learn and be able to understand how to actually train your mind. So there's nothing on the teachings of the Buddha that is about belief. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning and examining and investigating teachings. You're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings. You're integrating them into your day-to-day life in order to train your mind and uproot these pollutions so that the mind can start experiencing this brightness, this radiance, and this joy, this cheerfulness and gladness that is the enlightened mind. So we have various programs here that are going to help you to be able to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. And you can attend here at the temple, or you can attend through our live stream as well, because we live stream our classes. And you can even watch recordings if you can't attend the live classes. On Sundays and Wednesdays, we have something called the group learning program. This is a great place for students to start out, because over the course of 7 months, we gradually work our way through this first book. It's called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And you can get this book for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for our printing costs, or you can get it on Amazon. Each Sunday, I go chapter by chapter, and I help you to understand the teachings of the Buddha through having classes and through you reading, through you being able to investigate the teachings. You'll be able to understand what's causing your mind to experience these feelings so that then you can actually uproot them. And then we have other programs like courses and retreats and things like this that also help you to develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And then it takes you all the way through to be able to help you understand the actual teachings that you need to be able to get to enlightenment. And then we have a program like this on Saturdays, where over the course of a year and a half, each Saturday, we go through the other books. We have a volume of books here, 13 volumes. It's titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. And in this particular program, we go through volumes 2 through 13 over the course of a year and a half. And we just recently restarted this back in July, and we're actually in volume 5 now of this book series. Oops, there's a tissue. We're in volume 5 of this book series. It's titled The First Stage of Enlightenment, Stream Enter. These are the teachings that you need to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment. There's 4 individual stages of enlightenment. They're referred to as Stream Enter, Once Returner, Non-Returner, and Arahant. This is how the Buddha referred to them during his lifetime. We tend to refer to them as the first, second, third, and fourth stage of enlightenment. The mind is actually enlightened when you get to the 4th stage of enlightenment. Getting to the first stage of enlightenment, there's going to be significant improvement. It's not like a light switch. Oftentimes people think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And while you need meditation to be able to train your mind to get to enlightenment, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment with only meditation. So you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation, but you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment. So for example, even though you can't do this, let's just say you were meditating for 23 hours a day. And then for an hour a day, you went outside and you were bitter and harsh and hostile with people. Your mind's not enlightened. You're not anywhere close to enlightenment in that situation. So there's certain training that you need, and meditation is part of that training, but there's other training as well. So what we do in this particular program is we have the words of the Buddha here, and we study each chapter. It's more like a study group, where in the other programs and courses and retreats, it's more of a traditional style of learning where I'll be teaching for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I open up to questions. And then I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up to questions. But here what we do is in the Pali Canon and English study group is it's more like a study group. What I do is I invite students here at the temple or anyone online who's in Zoom, you can volunteer to read this particular chapter. And when we say chapter, it's quite short. It just goes to this particular line. These are the words of the Buddha. And then this is a reference back to the original source teachings. The original source teachings of the Buddha are in 45 volumes of books that are about this thick. It's called the Pali Canon because it's in the Pali language, the original version of it. So this particular reference helps you to get back to the original Pali Canon, which is this particular discourse from the Buddha. And then you've got words from me that are helping you understand how to integrate this into your life. As you're going to see, the Buddha teaches very clear, very concise, and very precise. You don't need to interpret his words, but it helps to have a teacher and a dedicated practitioner who's guiding you and helping you to be able to see what you need to be able to learn. Because there are certain teachings that the Buddha teaches that they're connected to other teachings. And if you don't understand the totality of those teachings, you wouldn't necessarily understand how to integrate them into your day-to-day life. So a teacher is kind of like a tour guide. You're on your own journey to enlightenment. You're your own independent practitioner where you're not believing any of the teachings. You're learning, examining, and investigating. You're reflecting to independently verify the teachings, and you're practicing to be able to integrate them into your life. And your teacher is essentially pointing out to you the things that you need to learn and grow and develop, but you're doing the work to be able to do that development. It's like a self-help program. That's essentially what the teachings of the Buddha are. And it's been around for over 2,500 years to be able to help you to evolve past this anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings. So what I do is I invite a student to read these chapters, and after someone reads a chapter, then I will share some teachings on that, and then I will open up to any questions that you guys have. If you would like to volunteer to read or you have questions, we have microphones in the white bowl in front of the camera. All you need to do is get a microphone out of the white bowl. You press the gray button, the lights will come on, and then you hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online through your reading or through any questions that you have. If you talk here at the temple without a microphone, the people online won't be able to hear you. And then for those of you guys in Zoom, if you would like to volunteer to read, just electronically raise your hand in Zoom. I'll be able to see that, and then you can unmute your microphone and you'll be able to read, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. We'll be able to hear you online as well. And then if you have any questions online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. All of you guys that are online, you can just put your questions there in the comment section and I'll be able to see it. Or if you're in Zoom and you have a question, you can also electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then you can ask your question that way too. So would anybody like to volunteer to read this first chapter? Pat, you got it? Okay. Did you have your hand up, sir? You did? Okay, you're welcome to get a microphone here. Pat's going to offer you his as well. Yeah, did I see your hand up? Oh, okay. Oh, you were scratching your hair. Okay, I saw out of the corner of my eye, I saw something going on over there. Okay, maybe another time. Okay, go ahead, Pat.
6 benefits in realizing the fruit of stream entry. Monks, these are the 6 benefits in realizing the fruit of stream entry. What 6? 1 is fixed in the wholesome teachings. 1 is incapable of decline. 1's discontentedness is limited. 1 comes to possess wisdom not shared by others. 1 has clearly seen causation. 1 has clearly seen casually arisen objects. These are the 6 benefits in realizing the fruit of stream entry.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So here, the Buddha is giving a discourse of the benefits of having gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. In order to get to the first stage of enlightenment, there are certain teachings that you would need to learn and grow and develop in order to train your mind. And that's what we teach in those foundational teachings and those foundational classes and courses and programs, that you can learn what's called the Eightfold Path. I'm going to be teaching this tomorrow. If you guys are interested in coming here to learn the core central teaching of the Buddha, I'm going to be starting this at 9 a.m. tomorrow, where I'm going to be actually teaching you in that more traditional method. We're going to be walking through and I'm going to teach you this core central teaching of the Buddha called the Eightfold Path. You would need to know that inside and out, backwards and forwards, to really be able to even get on the path to enlightenment. So that's why we start students out with that. And having learned the Eightfold Path and practiced it very well, you'll start noticing that your mind will move into what's called the jhanas. These are preliminary phases that the mind goes through on its way to the first stage of enlightenment. And once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, there's significant benefits that you'll experience. All the way through the jhanas, those preliminary phases, you're going to notice these enhanced qualities of mind starting to shine through more and more because you're eliminating some of the pollution in the mind. And by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to notice these particular benefits. The first one is that one is fixed in the wholesome teachings. What this means is you won't have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha any longer. Right now, you might have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha. You might even doubt whether this person actually even lived. But that's just because you haven't had the time and you haven't taken the time to investigate his teachings. If you investigate his teachings and you start practicing them, you're going to see that they actually work. It's not about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. When you're learning and practicing his teachings in this life and you're seeing the condition of your mind improving and you see the condition of your life improving, you'll know that these teachings are true and they actually worked. And this individual really, truly, indeed lived. So by the time you get to this first stage of enlightenment, you will be past your doubt about the teachings and you'll be fixed in these teachings. You won't be enlightened yet, but you'll know that it's these teachings that are leading to your enlightenment, and you'll be fixed in that course and knowing that, hey, if I just keep learning and practicing, the mind's going to ultimately get to enlightenment. You'll notice that the mind is incapable of decline. What this means is that once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, any progress that you've made in terms of the condition of your mind and how it's performing, it won't regress backwards. Prior to the first stage of enlightenment, if you became complacent at all, your mind will regress backwards. So in those jhanas, the preliminary phases that the mind experiences, if you became complacent, even though there's heightened qualities there, your mind would regress backwards. But by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, there's no regression. There's only forward progress from that point forward. You'll notice that your discontentedness is significantly decreased, that it's just a mere fraction of what it once was. So that whatever anger and sadness and frustration and stress and anxiety and all these other feelings that you experienced prior to the path to enlightenment, having gotten on the path to enlightenment, training your mind to the point where you're in the first stage of enlightenment, your discontentedness is significantly diminished. You'll notice that you're not having this extreme rage. You're not noticing those kinds of things. You're not noticing this heavy stress and anxiety and things like this, that this has all been limited, that it's decreased, and it's just a mere fraction of what it once was when you were off the path to enlightenment. You'll notice that you have wisdom that other people don't have, because what the Buddha is teaching you is the natural laws of existence. He's explaining to you the way the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And there are certain aspects of these natural laws that the common person just doesn't understand. It's kind of like when we were growing up as a child, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. Other people around us understood it, like adults, but we didn't understand it as a child. And this is why we struggled and we had certain difficulties. We fell down, we hurt our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, because we had wisdom, or we didn't have wisdom that other people had. So by the time you're making your way to this first stage of enlightenment, you will have wisdom that other people don't have. And you'll need to make sure that you don't have conceits or arrogance or pride because of that. Because it's very easy for the mind to do, that you walk around boastful with a chip on your shoulder, thinking that you're better than everyone else, arrogant and boastful. And when this is going on, people are just going to push you to the side because they're not interested in being around that arrogance and pride. So when you're acquiring this wisdom about the world and your mind's starting to function more optimally, you need to remain humble and and down to earth. But you will have wisdom that other people won't have. The Buddha says here, one has clearly seen causation. What he means by this is that by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you have clearly seen the natural law of Gama. You might have heard the word karma being used. This word karma is from the Sanskrit language, where the word Gama is from the Pali language. So people who tend to study the original teachings of the Buddha will use the word Gama. If this word translated to just one English word, I would use that because it'd be easier for everyone to understand it. But it doesn't translate to just one English word. What the natural law of Gama is its cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. That whatever decisions you make, you're going to experience the results of those. Oftentimes when you're experiencing unwholesome things in life, in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, you'll probably blame that on other people. When you experience certain things that are struggles and challenges and difficult, you'll probably blame other people for those things. But that's the mind's ego, the arrogance and the pride, the lack of wisdom, thinking that other people are causing these unwholesome things in your life. But when wholesome things are going on in a person's life, they'll usually take credit for that. But you can't have it both ways. It can't be that your decisions are leading to wholesome things and it's other people's decisions that are leading to unwholesome things. Everything you experience in life, either wholesome or unwholesome, it's coming from decisions that you make. And the more that you can see this, it's very empowering, because if it's everybody else that's causing the things that you're experiencing in your life, you have no ability to improve your life because it's everybody else who's causing the experiences that you're having. Or if it's destiny or fate, or if it's good luck or bad luck, the reason why you're experiencing certain things in life, you have no ability to change your life. You're locked in. But if you can see the natural law of Gama, then you can understand that what you're experiencing in life is based on your own decisions. So therefore, if there's anything that you don't particularly care about in your life and you would prefer to not happen, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. But with a lack of wisdom of the natural law of Gama, you won't know how to make those different decisions that are leading to different results. And you'll feel like you're stuck. And you'll keep experiencing the same problems over and over and over again. So if you keep experiencing the same problems over and over, this is due to a lack of wisdom of this natural law of Gama. Maybe you're having broken relationships over and over and over and over again. Maybe you're struggling in certain relationships over and over and over again. This is just because the mind lacks wisdom and it hasn't understood how to have harmonious relationships with all beings in the world. But if you keep blaming other people for your troubled relationships, you will never cultivate the wisdom that you need in order to have better and better relationships. So by the time someone's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, they would have clearly seen this causation, this cause and effect, or this action and result. The natural law of Gama isn't anything mystical or magical. There's no being or no entity overseeing this. It's not punishments and rewards. It's not even about who's at fault or who's to blame. It's literally about a sequence of events. And these sequence of events are based on your decisions, that based on certain decisions you make, you will either experience wholesome things or unwholesome things. So when you make wise decisions, you will experience wholesome Gama, or wholesome results. And when you make unwise decisions, you will experience unwholesome Gama, or unwholesome results. As I said, it's nothing mystical or magical. So all of you guys look like you probably have maybe taken a shower this morning. You've wearing some clothes. You might have had some breakfast and things like this. You have a certain hairstyle. These are all decisions that you're making. This is the cause and effect. If it wasn't for you going out into the world and contributing some kind of benefit to somebody, you wouldn't be able to travel here to Thailand. You wouldn't be able to afford to wear these clothes. You wouldn't be able to have the food that you have. This is cause and effect, or action and result. It's certain wise decisions that you've made that led to these wholesome results. And if you make wise decisions, you'll continue to experience wholesome results. But when you're experiencing unwholesome results in your life, this is from decisions that you're making. And you need to be able to see this in order to be able to make your way to the first stage of enlightenment. So there are certain foundational classes that we teach to help you understand the natural law of Gama more closely. So by the time someone's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, they would clearly see the natural law of Gama within their own life, and they will be able to see it functioning at all times. One has clearly seen causally arisen objects. What this is referring to is dependent origination. We studied this last week in this particular program. Dependent origination is the highest, most ultimate truth of the Buddha, where he gives you these 12 interlinking steps of showing you exactly what's leading to the discontent feelings that are occurring in your mind, where he has other teachings that are kind of like a little window into the path to enlightenment and understanding what's going on in your own mind. It's called the Four Noble Truths. This penetrates into the heart of the unenlightened mind, helping you to understand what's causing your anger and sadness and frustration. And then he has deeper teachings like the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. But ultimately, you get to the point where you start understanding things like the 10 fetters and dependent origination. These are 12 interlinking steps that is showing you why your mind keeps experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and other feelings. It also helps you to understand rebirth in this cycle of rebirth. Again, everything the Buddha taught is independently verifiable. The cycle of rebirth is not something that you believe in. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life. That might be what somebody taught you, and you're believing that just because you haven't looked at the wisdom to be able to independently verify that beings are being reborn over and over and over again. As you journey in your path to enlightenment, you can come in contact with the wisdom to be able to independently verify that the cycle of rebirth is actually true, that you keep experiencing lives over and over and over again until you cultivate the wisdom that you need to understand this world that you live in. As long as you don't understand this world and your mind's holding on to it, you'll keep coming back over and over and over again. So dependent origination is one of those teachings, among others, that you can learn, examine, and investigate. You can reflect on it to independently verify it, and then you can practice to be able to then see for yourself the truth that there's this continuous cycle of rebirth over and over and over again. And it's also explaining to you why your mind is experiencing discontent feelings. So an individual who's in the first stage of enlightenment would have clearly seen dependent origination and clearly understand it because they've penetrated into it and investigated it. So these are the 6 benefits of having gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. That's what stream entry is. And we call it stream entry because just like a log enters the stream and it's going to eventually get to the ocean, once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. So that's why we call it stream entry, because once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to get to enlightenment, or you're going to get to the ocean, just like that log. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? Remember, for you, those of you online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or on Zoom. Just checking here online to see if we have any questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so let's move to the next chapter, which is chapter 22. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Are you guys shy? This is part of what the unenlightened mind does, is it's shy. It doesn't want to be perceived by others in a certain way. It's holding on. So one of the ways to train your mind to eliminate shyness is to put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. What the mind's going to want to do is it's going to want to push it away, and it thinks that that's going to solve the problem. But the mind doesn't solve its problems that way, by pushing them away. You actually sometimes need to put the mind in a particular situation, and it's going to help you to get over your shyness. Nobody would like to read? Okay, Pat, you can read. Yeah.
A stream enterer is worth more than being a wheel-turning monarch. Monks. Although a wheel-turning monarch, having exercised supreme sovereign rulership over the 4 continents, with the breakup of the body, after death, is reborn in a good destination, in a heavenly world, in the company of the heavenly beings of the heavenly realm, and there in the Nandana grove, accompanied by an entourage of heavenly nymphs. He enjoys himself supplied and endowed with the 5 chords of heavenly sensual pleasure. Still, as he does not possess 4 things, he is not freed from hell, the animal realm, and the realm of afflicted spirits, not freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. Although, monks, a noble disciple maintains himself by lumps of alms food and wears rag robes, still, as he possesses four things, he is freed from hell, the animal realm, and the realm of afflicted spirits, freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. What are the four? Here, monks, the noble disciple possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus: the Tathagata is an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true wisdom and conduct, fortunate, knower of the worlds, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of heavenly beings and humans, the enlightened one, the fortunate one. He possesses well-confirmed confidence in the teachings thus: the teachings are well expounded by the perfectly enlightened one, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable to be personally experienced by the wise. He possesses confirmed confidence in the community thus: the community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is practicing the wholesome way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way. That is, the four pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. This community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respective salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. He possesses the virtues, moral conduct, dear to the noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unblotched, liberating, praised by the wise, not misunderstood, and leading to concentration. He possesses these four things, and, monks, between the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents and the obtaining of the 4 things, the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents is not worth the 16th part of obtaining of the 4 things.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So first, let's talk about what a wheel-turning monarch is. What a wheel-turning monarch is an individual who's in a leadership position within a community, and they're guiding that community based on the teachings of the Buddha. So we might think about like a king or a queen or a president or prime minister, or nowadays maybe even like a boss, if they were leading a company of several hundred or thousands of people, and they were making decisions based on the teachings of the Buddha, which the teachings of the Buddha are the natural laws of existence. So they're going to lead to peacefulness and joy. They're going to lead to wise decision making. So a wheel-turning monarch is somebody during the lifetime of the Buddha, is someone who's leading over a particular group of people. And if you had a kingdom of 50 or 100,000 people and you were leading those individuals based on the teachings of the Buddha, this would be very good for those people because they would be able to learn the teachings of the Buddha. And the Buddha is saying that this individual who's a wheel-turning monarch is not as beneficial in the world as someone who's actually a stream enterer, someone who's in the first stage of enlightenment. A person who's in the first stage of enlightenment is very beneficial to the world. An enlightened being is even more beneficial because more and more people would be able to learn how to get to that peace and that joy. Through interacting with this individual, there are certain things that you would learn. By having an individual who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment in a community, they're going to be able to help others. This is one of the reasons why you might have decided to come to Thailand. Maybe you find it to be somewhat peaceful here. Maybe when you walk down the street, you see people aren't yelling and hollering at you. Maybe you see people aren't stealing from you. Maybe you see when you go into a store that people are polite and respectful and kind and loving and warm and gentle. Perhaps this is what you observe. I'm not sure what your experiences are like, but everybody's a little bit different. So here in Thailand, there's a lot of people who are practicing these teachings. So you see a certain amount of peacefulness and joy amongst the people. This is why they refer to Thailand oftentimes as the land of smiles, because it's very easy to smile when your mind isn't polluted and carrying around these pollutions. But when you're angry and disgruntled and frustrated and wanting things to be a certain way, You can only be happy when you get things your way. And when you're not getting things your way, you might be angry or frustrated or irritated. And it's very challenging to smile and be cheerful and glad and uplifted in those kinds of situations. So here in Thailand, there's a large number of people who are actively training their mind. So this is why people go around oftentimes smiling. So a wheel-turning monarch, while they're beneficial for the world and very helpful for the world, the Buddha is saying that a person who's in the first stage of enlightenment is actually even more beneficial. And he's talking about these 4 things, among others, that you'll learn that a person who's in the first stage of enlightenment will have. What they will have is they will have confidence in the Buddha, because they would have studied his teachings to a certain degree, and they would actually see that they actually work. The Buddha invites people to come examine his teachings. You'll never hear the Buddha say, just believe me, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. He teaches you to come and examine his teachings, come investigate them, because he knows that if you investigate his teachings, you'll learn them and you'll see the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. And as you're experiencing that, you'll gain this confidence in the Buddha, because as you're making your way to enlightenment, there's some real challenges along the way, and you're going to need to have that confidence in the Buddha. So that is developed through investigation of the teachings. And then the next thing is called the confidence in the teachings, that as you learn and grow and develop in the teachings, you'll start getting confidence in these teachings because you'll see that they actually work. And then you'll have confidence in the community. What that means is the people who you're learning with, that we have a large international community. Even though there's you guys here, there's thousands and thousands of people all over the world that are sharing, that are studying teachings with me. And this community is here to support you and encourage you and help you along, because you'll learn from a teacher, but you also learn from other people too. You'll see, wow, I really like how Pat's not shy and he can just pick up the microphone and read a chapter. That's really nice. Maybe I'll try to do that. That's really helpful. And you can see from other people in our community that they're polite and they're generous and they're friendly and they're kind and they're warm and they're gentle and they're loving and they're respectful. And you can see these qualities by spending time with them. So these individuals that are part of the community are going to help you to get to enlightenment too, because they're going to be modeling the conduct that they've learned through the teachings of the Buddha. These 3 things are referred to as the triple gem or the triple jewel. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without confidence in the Buddha, having access to his teachings, and being part of a community. If you just had one of these things, or even 2 of these things, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. Whereas if you just had confidence in the Buddha, but you didn't have access to his teachings and you weren't part of a community, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. Or if you just had access to his teachings, but you didn't have confidence in him and you weren't part of a community, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. If you were part of a community, but you didn't have confidence in the Buddha and you didn't have access to his teachings, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. So it's having all 3 of these things that an individual can make their way to enlightenment. And this is something that is developed over time. Right now, you have access to his teachings. If you would like to get access to his books, to the books with his words in it, videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats, personal guidance, you have access to that. But you might not have confidence in the Buddha right now, particularly if you haven't investigated his teachings. And you can also be part of a community. Slowly but surely, you can learn and grow and develop, and you'll have what's called the triple gem or the triple jewel. And then as part of your learning, you'll learn what's called the moral conduct. There's certain moral conduct that you're doing right now that is causing harm to others, and this is why harm is coming back to you. If you're being bitter and harsh and hostile, resentful in your relationships, all that's going to come back to you. And you might not have seen that yet through the natural law of karma, that you might think that the people in your life deserve this, that maybe your anger that you're venting at them, you might think you're justified in that anger. But that anger is coming from your own mind, and your moral conduct, being bitter and harsh and hostile, is causing harm in these situations. So if you're lying, for example, or you're slandering or gossiping about people, if you're speaking harsh and bitter and hostile, or you have frivolous speech where you're just talking and talking and talking and talking with an underlying craving there and not really having any benefit or purpose to your speech, these are all things that you can improve around your speech, for example. And you'll see that this will improve the state of your mind and your life as well. If you notice here, when the Buddha is talking about moral conduct, he's talking about how it leads to concentration. When you don't understand the wise moral conduct, you'll make unwise decisions about how you interact in the world through your intentions, your speech, your actions, your livelihood, and how you sustain your life. And it will cause a lack of concentration and focus in your mind. Because when you're lying in bed at night trying to fall asleep, you'll be kind of worried about the things that you've been doing in your day, and you'll maybe have fear and anxiety and stress and fear that's coming into the mind. But when you've been understanding and learning and practicing wise moral conduct, you can go to sleep at night completely at peace, knowing that you haven't caused any harm to anyone in that particular day. But if you don't know the natural law of karma, you don't necessarily know whether you're causing harm or not. You might be having conversations with people thinking that you have all the best intentions in the world, and when you're having that conversation, it blows up on you, and you're like, whoa, what happened? Right? And this is because the mind lacks wisdom of the natural laws. And as you're making decisions in those conversations and in those relationships, you're making certain unwise decisions that are leading to unwholesome results. But when you understand the moral conduct that the Buddha teaches you, he's showing you this natural law. He's not giving you rules or commandments to follow. He's helping you to be able to see this natural law around things like your intentions, your speech, your actions, your livelihood, how you choose to sustain your life. And by practicing that wholesome moral conduct, you'll notice, among other things, that you'll notice this concentration and clarity coming into the mind, because you'll know with 100% confidence that you're not causing harm to others. And you also see that your relationships really improve too, because if you're in relationships where there's any kind of bitterness or hostility, this is from decisions that you're making. You need to be able to train your mind and get to the point where all your relationships are harmonious. If you have difficulties with your parents or your siblings, your life partner, your children, you can actually resolve all of these things. But without the wisdom of how to do that and how to improve in your day-to-day life, you wouldn't know how to do that. So that's where the teachings of the Buddha come in, to be able to provide you the wisdom of how to improve your life and improve the condition of your mind through training of your mind. So here the Buddha is essentially saying that someone who's gotten into this first stage of enlightenment is very beneficial for the world. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Let's see what the next one is. Okay, anybody would like to read this one? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I see two hands. Go ahead. You guys can get mics. I saw you and you. Yeah, go ahead. Help yourself. Yeah, you guys can share. Maybe one can take one and then one can take the other one. It looks like Marcy's volunteering online too. We'll get to you, Marcy.
There cannot be alteration in a stream enterer. Monks, there may be alteration in the four great elements in the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the wind element. But there cannot be alteration in the noble disciple who possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha, in the teaching community. Therein there is alteration, that the noble disciple who possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha might be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the realm of afflicted spirits. This is impossible. Monks, there may be alteration in the four great elements in the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the wind element, but there cannot be alteration in the noble disciple who possesses the virtues dear to the noble ones. Therein this is alteration, that the noble disciple possesses the virtues, moral conduct, dear to the noble ones, might be reborn in hell, in the animal realm, or in the realm of afflicted spirits. This is impossible.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So first, let's talk about what a noble disciple is. A noble disciple is someone who studied the teachings of the Buddha very closely, that during the lifetime of the Buddha, they had a very strong caste system in place. There were people who were considered to be lower class, and then people who were kind of affluent or noble. And these noble people were born into these families, and they were rich and affluent and well-liked in the community. And they would walk around with their right shoulder exposed. When they would walk through town, they would have clothing on that exposes their right shoulder. And the people who were considered in the lower class, they would just, wear regular clothes. They were kind of maybe rag clothes or what have you. And people were born into these families. And people thought before the Buddha was teaching that whatever family you were born into determines whether you're noble or whether you're in this kind of low family. And what the Buddha was teaching was that what makes you noble is your wisdom and how you function in the world. That if you have wisdom in your mind and you're functioning in the world in a harmless way, this is what helps you to be noble. So even if someone was born into a lower class family and they ordained with him as a student, they would wear those robes with their right shoulder exposed. This is why you see monks today walking around with their right shoulder exposed, because the Buddha would bring people into his community, and right away he considered them to be noble in terms of wearing the clothing, because now they're making an effort to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. And then as you get deeper and deeper into the teachings of the Buddha, he would consider these people to be noble disciples because they're learning very closely and they're practicing the teachings more closely. So anyone who's in the first stage of enlightenment is a noble disciple, the way that the Buddha describes them. Now we might just call that a dedicated practitioner, someone who's dedicated to learning and growing and developing on the path to enlightenment. And the Buddha is saying a noble disciple will have confirmed confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, and they will have a certain amount of moral conduct, like we were studying in the last chapter, that is improved, that they have this improved moral conduct. And what he's saying is, while these four great elements will change, the earth, water, fire, and wind, this is how they described material objects, is through these elements. That the earth element is referring to the solids of the body. So like the bones, the teeth, the fingernails, the hair, these are the solids of the body. That's how they would refer to the body as the earth element. And then there's a water element. So like your urine, your saliva, your tears, the pus, the blood, this is the water element. Then you've got the fire element. This is the heat of the body, the temperature, often associated with digestion. Then you've got the wind element. This is the movement inside the body. So like the blood itself is mostly the water element, but the movement of the blood through the vein, that's the wind element. So these four great elements, meaning the physical structures of this body, will change. That's what he's saying. There will be alteration to this physical body. This physical body will change over time. This body is impermanent. You can see that, and you can confirm that for yourself, that this body is actually constantly changing. You get moles and pimples, and your hair grows, you get wrinkles, you get gray hair, you lose your hair, you get a little extra fat here and there. There's this constant change to the physical body. But what he's saying is that the mind can't change. For someone who has confirmed confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, and that they're practicing a certain level of moral conduct, their mind won't regress backwards. It won't actually change because the mind is fixed in those wholesome teachings. And for someone who's gotten into this first stage of enlightenment, what the Buddha is also saying is they won't be reborn into the lower realms of hell, animal, and afflicted spirits. None of these realms that the Buddha taught are permanent. People are moving in and out of these realms all the time. Again, this is something you can independently verify. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but you can independently verify these teachings. There's 5 realms that the Buddha taught. He taught hell, animal, afflicted spirits, which are like ghosts. Then there's human realm, and then there's the heavenly realm, these heavenly beings. In all of these realms, beings are moving in and out of these realms at different times. The human realm is the ideal existence because we can actually train our mind to make our way to enlightenment. We can develop and cultivate our mind and actually attain enlightenment. In the lower realms of hell, animal, and afflicted spirits, those beings aren't able to actually cultivate their mind to the point of enlightenment. They're going to need to be reborn into a human existence or a heavenly existence in order to be able to make their way to enlightenment. But here in the human realm, we tend to have built-in motivation to make our way to enlightenment because you probably don't like that sadness or the frustration or the agitation or annoyance and those other discontent feelings, the stress, the guilt, and the shame and the fear. And if you're looking to escape all of that, it's the teachings of the Buddha that will do do that for you, but you wouldn't be able to accomplish enlightenment from those lower realms. So once somebody gets to a certain level of development, they've become a better and better human being. Getting to that first stage of enlightenment, you've become a better and better human being at this point. You're functioning in the world better than you did previously. In the unenlightened state, for a human being who's off the path to enlightenment, the mind functions very much like an animal. If you think about an animal will tend to hoard its food. An animal will tend to have difficulty sharing with others. An animal will go around and kill. It will steal. It will have sexual misconduct. It'll have sex with lots of different individuals. An animal has a pecking order. It's looking in its elephant herd. Who's above us or who's below us? Or this pack of wolves. Who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female? And this ego and this conceit in the mind is constantly looking for this pecking order of who's above me and who's below me. So the unenlightened human mind functions very much like an animal. And this is why some people think that human beings are animals. But we're not actually animals, we're human beings. And we can actually become better and better human beings. And it's the teachings of the Buddha that are going to guide you in how to do that. Through purification of your mind and training your mind, you can evolve, just like a snake or a lizard evolves into a better and better species. A human being can do the same thing. We can evolve to this better existence, this better way of life. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion in the way that you might think of a religion. If you think of religion as like someone at the top who's telling everybody else what to do, and there's rules and commandments, and there's rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, this isn't what the Buddha taught. He didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. He didn't teach rules and commandments. There's not one person at the top of Buddhism that's telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing. As I mentioned, you are your own individual practitioner on your own journey to enlightenment. So you can grow and evolve and develop, training your mind. And it's not a religion. It's not a bunch of beliefs. It's not a doctrine that you're believing in. It's not rules or commandments. It's understanding human psychology. It's understanding the world around you so that now you can navigate this world more peacefully and more harmoniously with all beings around you. And you'll be able to see that that's happening because it's not, like I mentioned, a bunch of beliefs that you're believing a bunch of things and hoping something good happens when you die. You're actually learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing now in this life. So you actually see the benefits now in this life. So the Buddha is explaining that someone who has confirmed confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, and has a certain level of moral conduct, that it's not possible for the mind to be altered or changed, meaning regress backwards. There's only going to be forward progress from that point forward. So do you guys have any questions on this one? Marcy, I see your hands up. I'm not sure if that was for reading or if that was for a question. Would you like to let me know?
That was a question, but you ended up answering it, Teacher David. But I will also read if there is no one else that would like to read.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Good to hear I answered your question. All right. Let me just check to see if we have any questions anywhere else. All right. We don't have questions anywhere else. So let's go to this next one. This is chapter 24. Ma'am, would you like to read? Okay. We have that mic there.
6 cases of incapability by one in view. First discourse. Monks, there are these 6 cases of incapability. What 6? 1 accomplished in view is 1. Incapable of considering any conditioned phenomenon, thing, as permanent. 2. Incapable of considering any conditioned phenomenon, thing, as pleasurable. 3. Incapable of considering any phenomenon, thing, as a self. 4. Incapable of doing a grave act that brings immediate results. 5. Incapable of resorting to the belief that purity, or enlightenment, comes about through superstitious and auspicious acts. And 6. Incapable of seeking a person worthy of offerings outside here. These are the 6 cases of incapability.
Okay, thank you very much. So here, this is just one discourse. The Buddha has many discourses on the 6 cases of incapability. So this isn't the only 6. This is just 6 that he's talking about here in this particular discourse. What he's saying here is that it's incapable for someone who has accomplishment in view to be able to view anything as permanent, any conditioned phenomenon. There's what's called conditioned objects, and there's unconditioned objects. This is where the Buddha is teaching you the way the world is, and you need to be able to know this, that things in the world around you are constantly changing, that there's these conditioned objects that arise, that change, and fade away. The reason why this is so important is because your mind in the unenlightened state, it craves permanence. It wants things to be permanent. This is why when you were in that relationship with the boyfriend or girlfriend, you were so happy and excited because you were getting what you wanted. But then when you guys broke up, you felt sad, you felt angry, you were maybe lonely or bored, you were missing this person. This is because the mind's craving permanence, wanting things to be permanent, but yet you live in an impermanent world. So by the time that you've studied the original teachings of the Buddha, would you mind turning off that mic? Thank you so much. By the time you've studied the teachings of the Buddha and you've independently verified and reflected on them, you won't be able to consider anything as being permanent as a conditioned object. Conditioned objects arise, they change, and they fade away. So essentially, anything you see, anything you hear, anything you smell, anything that comes in contact with the tongue, like a flavor, any physical object that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through your mind, these are all impermanent, meaning they're constantly changing. They are not permanent. And this is so important for you to understand and train your mind to be able to know, because your mind in the unenlightened state is going to crave permanence. So this is why when you don't know where your mobile phone is, and you're rushing around the house trying to look for your mobile phone, this is because your mind's craving and desiring for this phone to be permanent. Your mind's holding on to it, wanting it to be permanent. And now you feel stressed and you feel anxiety when you can't find your phone, right? Or when your bank account balance is up here and you get so happy, and then when it goes down here, you feel sad and frustrated. This is because your mind's craving permanence. You're wanting something to be permanent. But in order to understand the way the world is and understand why your mind is experiencing the discontent feelings, you need to be able to see that everything around you is impermanent. And that's what the Buddha is teaching in his other teachings. And he's saying that someone who's accomplished in view would be incapable of considering any conditioned object as permanent. They would also be incapable of considering any conditioned object as pleasurable. What he means here is that you'll understand that your happiness and your excitement and your elation and your thrill and your exhilaration is coming from a condition. That if you get what you want, you get happy or excited. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like sadness, anger, and frustration. So if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside, you'll get so happy. You'll get so excited. Yay! The mind's getting what it wants, which is the sun. Or if you look at your bank account balance and it's up here, you'll be like, yay, I'm so happy. Oh, I'm so excited, right? But then because of impermanence, when all that stuff changes, your happiness is going to go away. That's why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness yet, because your mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition. That if it's sunny outside, you'll be happy. But then when it rains, you'll be sad or frustrated. When your bank account balance is this, you'll be happy. But then when it goes here, you'll be sad, because you're forming your inner feelings on some condition. And that condition is impermanent. Your happiness is impermanent. So if mom and dad do this, you're happy. But if they do this, you're angry or sad or frustrated. This is conditional feelings. It's not mom and dad that's causing those feelings. It's the mind itself. So by the time you get to accomplishment in view, you will understand that forming your inner feelings based on some condition is not pleasurable, because it's temporary, it's unsatisfying, that happiness that's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. What you would like to be able to get to is the permanent happiness, the permanent joy. There's something called unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, that the mind isn't forming its inner feelings based on some condition. Whereas if it's sunny outside, You were already happy before you saw that it was sunny outside. You were already happy. And then when the sun is gone and it's raining, you can maintain your happiness because you didn't form your happiness based on the sun. So therefore, when the sun goes away, you're already happy. You're not happy because your bank account balance is here. So that means when it goes here, you can still maintain your happiness. This is called unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy. And this is what you can train your mind to be able to do. But as long as you see conditional objects as being pleasurable, you'll keep chasing. Your mind will say, I'm feeling sad. I know what I need. I need a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Let me go find a boyfriend or girlfriend. And you'll chase that for a while. And then you'll get that. You'll feel happy temporarily. And then you'll start feeling sad again. And then you'll say, you know what? I know what I need. I need more money. Let me chase after that for a while. So then you'll chase after money. And then you'll get it. And you'll feel happy for a period of time. But then it'll fade away. And then you'll say, I know what I need. I need a bigger house. That's what I need. Let me chase this for a while, or a new car, or something else. The mind is just going to chase and chase and chase, and it's going to keep forming its inner feelings based on whether you get this thing or not. And because of that, you're sabotaging your ability to have permanent happiness or permanent joy, because your mind is forming its inner feelings based on this thing. And if you form your inner feelings based on this thing, you can only be happy when you've got it. So by the time you get to accomplishment in view, you'll be incapable of considering a conditioned object as being pleasurable, because you understand that that ultimately is going to lead to sadness and anger and frustration. Because when you get what you want, you're happy, but then when it's gone, you'll feel sad or angry or frustrated. So if you get so happy that you got a new job, well, when your company lays you off, or they go out of business, or you get fired, or you have to move somewhere else, and now you can't work at that job anymore, you'll be sad. You'll be frustrated. So the enlightened mind is just always enjoying everything around them. And that's because their mind hasn't formed their inner feelings based on this particular thing. The mind has been trained to not do that. Then someone who's accomplished in view will be incapable of considering anything as a self. What a self is where the mind has what's called personal existence view, where you might be clinging to your self-image, like this body, or you might be clinging to this mind, a certain self-identity, wanting others to perceive you in a certain way. And now when you're being perceived a certain way, you feel comfortable. But when you're not being perceived that way, you feel uncomfortable. So for example, if you spilled something on your clothing in a public setting, you might feel embarrassed. The reason why is because your mind is clinging to this body, this self-image, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. Or if you get a pimple or a mole or a gray hair, or you start losing your hair, or you get a wrinkle or something like this is your mind clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when that's not happening, you feel uncomfortable. Or there can be self-identity in your mind where you're clinging to something like, I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am German, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Brazilian. Any of this I am around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. As soon as your mind adopts the I am this, that means when that's intact, you'll feel happy, but when not, you'll feel frustrated or agitated. So for example, if you have in your mind, I am Chinese, or I am American, and you're at a restaurant, and 2 tables over, you hear somebody say, all Americans are loving and friendly and kind and warm and gentle, you'll get so happy. You're like, they're talking about me. I feel so great. But then 2 tables over, they say all Americans are this, or all Chinese people are this, or all German people are this, right? Someone's being angry and disgruntled and talking in a negative way. Well, if your mind identifies with that as who you are, you're going to think they're talking about you. And now you're going to get angry or frustrated. But it's occurring within your own mind because you're wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And your mind is clinging and holding on to this self-image and self-identity. So by the time you get to accomplishment in view, you won't be able to consider any of this as being who you are. You understand that there is a body. You understand that there is a mind, and these have come together for this existence, but this isn't who you are as a person. And there are certain tools and techniques to shed this away and train your mind to realize non-self, to realize that there is no self here. And that's what the Buddha is ultimately going to be able to teach you. If you learn and grow and develop, you'll be able to get to the point where you don't get embarrassed when you spill something on your clothes, where you can talk in a public setting like this and you're not shy, right? But this comes through training of the mind to be able to let go of holding on and wanting other people to perceive you in a certain way. Then the Buddha says an individual who's accomplished in view would be incapable of doing a grave act that brings immediate results. What he's talking about here is something that some people refer to as the 5 heinous crimes. This is like killing your mom, killing your dad, killing a Buddha, things like this. It's actually coming up in another discourse. Then he says a person accomplished in view would be incapable of resorting to the belief that purity, meaning enlightenment, comes about through superstitious or auspicious acts. Because somebody by this point would have understood dependent origination. They would understand that it's ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom that is leading to the discontent feelings. And the way to cultivate the mind and get to enlightenment is to eliminate the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the misunderstanding, the misperception, the lack of wisdom. That it's not through auspicious and superstitious things. It's not me sprinkling water on you or tying ropes or strings on your wrists or doing some kind of rites or rituals and ceremonies. That's not going to lead to wisdom. That's not going to lead to purification of the mind. What leads to purification of the mind is training of the mind. So by the time someone's gotten to accomplishment in view, they would have seen that very clearly through learning the teachings and through training their mind. They would see how this all works, and they wouldn't be able to resort to the belief that superstitious or auspicious acts are somehow improving the mind. And then the last one, the Buddha says, a person accomplished in view would be incapable of seeking a person worthy of offerings outside of here. What he's talking about here is that during his lifetime, there were multiple teachers who were teaching, and they were all claiming that it was their teachings that lead to enlightenment. Well, we know that it was the Buddha's teachings that lead to enlightenment. That's why they're still around 2,500 years later, because they actually work. Right? So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there was community people who lived in the community who were making offerings to all these different teachers and all these different people because they didn't know who was enlightened and who wasn't. They were just practicing generosity. But by the time you've deeply learned the teachings of the Buddha and you know that it's his teachings that are leading to enlightenment, what the Buddha is saying is you would be incapable of making an offering to another teacher who is outside of here, meaning someone who isn't teaching the path to enlightenment. Some of the teachers during the lifetime of the Buddha, they were teaching you to hang yourself upside down from trees, laying on beds of nails, piercing their body with metal implements, starving themselves. And some people were doing these kinds of things, and these things don't lead to enlightenment. So what the Buddha is teaching is like, hey, if you've learned my teachings well enough and you've penetrated them and you've seen them with wisdom and you've gotten to this accomplishment in view and you see the condition of your mind, you would be incapable of making an offering to those people who are hanging themselves upside down from trees, because you would know that it's not that that's leading to enlightenment. You would know that it's these teachings, and you would be interested in supporting and helping the teachings to continue to flourish in the world. Because what the Buddha would do during his lifetime is he would actually sleep in the home of his students. His students would invite them over, and he would stay in their home for a few days or a few weeks or even a month or two. He would stay right alongside of his students, and they would give him a place to sleep. They would give him clothes, they would give him food and water and shelter and medical care, and then in exchange, he would teach and help them. He didn't even accept money during his lifetime. Nowadays, we need to accept a little bit of money because we have to pay electric and water and construction costs and things like that. We have to pay for these kinds of things, so we need to accept some amount of money because students aren't there with us all the time to be able to get these things and acquire the things that we need to be able to teach. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, he could just live in people's homes, eat and have shelter and clothing and water and food and things like this, and then he could just teach. So the Buddha is saying that these people would be incapable of offering food and clothing and water and shelter and medical care to somebody who's hanging themselves upside down from trees, for example, because they would have already known that it's his teachings that are leading to enlightenment, because they could see the improvement to the condition of their mind in their life. So this is the 6 cases of incapability for one accomplished in view. And there's others as well. This is just these 6. So you guys have any questions on this? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, let me see what the next one is. I think it's another 6 cases of incapability. Okay, Marcy, if you would like to read this one, go for it.
Sure, Teacher David, thank you. 6 cases of incapability by one accomplished in view. Second disclosure. Monks, there are these 6 cases of incapability. What 6? 1, accomplished in view is incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness towards the teacher, incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness towards the teachings, incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness towards the community, incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness towards the training, incapable of resorting to anything that should not be relied upon, incapable of undergoing an 8th existence. These are the 6 cases of incapability, the 8th existence. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here, this is another 6 cases of incapability, and there's more even beyond this too. What he's saying is, okay, for this person who's got to accomplishment in view, remember this person is a stream enterer. They're in that first stage of enlightenment. They've seen significant improvement to the condition of their mind in their life. What the Buddha is saying is this person would be incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness towards the teacher, because it's that teacher that helped them to be able to get to that enlightened mental state or that improved qualities of mind. So they would be incapable of being polite and kind and respectful to this individual who's helped them, because the way that a teacher works is they just help their students. We don't have any expectation. We don't want anything from you. We just help you, and we provide you the things that you need. And by the time that you've made your way to this improved mental state, the Buddha is saying you'd be incapable of being polite and respectful to that person, because they've helped you out of the kindness of their heart to be able to get to that improved mental state and that improved part of your life. Because it's a significant amount of effort from a teacher to be able to help a student to be able to improve and get to that point. So you'd have respect and politeness towards that person and the teachings themselves, because they led to this improved condition of mind in the community for the reasons that I mentioned, that you're also learning from a community as well. So you'd be incapable of being disrespectful and harsh and bitter and hostile to a fellow member of your community. In that first stage of enlightenment, you do still have ill will in your mind. So you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to other people, but the people in your community, you would be able to be polite or respectful to them. But ultimately, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody in the world. Right now, you might find that to be challenging. There might be certain situations where you're disrespectful, where you're impolite, you're unkind, and that can all be changed. You don't have to be that way with people. You can train your mind to do things differently. So it starts within your community, that you learn these teachings and you start to treat people in kind and friendly and respectful ways. Then you be incapable of residing without deep respect and politeness towards the training itself, and actually training the mind. Incapable of resorting to anything that should not be relied upon. What this means is that by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, you've learned very well how to learn, investigate, and examine teachings, how to reflect on those to independently verify them, and how to practice them and integrate them into your life. You're looking for the truth. You're looking for wisdom. You're not believing anything on this path. So as you're hearing things, even whether it's related to the Buddhist teachings or anything else, you're not just believing it. You need to see the truth for yourself, right? So if my son comes downstairs and he says, "Dad, I just cleaned my room," I said, "Oh yeah, really? I don't believe it," right? I don't believe it. It's not that I don't trust him. It's just I don't believe it until I see it with my own eyes, right? I need to Go upstairs and see it. Ah, I see you cleaned your room. Okay, now I know it's true, right? Or like I'm working with my son's school right now, helping them in a parent organization, and there's these increased tuition prices. And the school is saying that it needs more money to be able to afford to continue to go forward, and they're raising the tuition prices for all the students. Well, the school says that they don't have enough money to pay their teachers. I don't believe that. It's not that I don't trust them. It's just I'm not going to believe it. I need to see a financial report to be able to see the truth for myself. If you go out into the world making decisions based on belief, you're going to not know what's true or false, and you're going to be making unwise decisions. By the time you've seen the natural law of Gotama of cause and effect, you're going to know that anytime you are interested in experiencing wholesome results, you're going to need to make a wise decision. And your wise decisions are based on knowing the truth. If you're just clinging to a perception and you don't know the actual truth, how can you ever get to a wise decision? You need to be able to see the truth and make a wise decision for yourself. If you're making decisions based on beliefs, that's going to lead to unwholesome results because you're making unwise decisions because the decision that you're making isn't based on truth. So by the time you've gotten to this particular part of your practice, you will not be just relying on things. You won't be believing in things. You'll be looking for the truth in any particular situation. And then the Buddha is saying that you would be incapable of undergoing an eighth existence. That's because by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment either in this life or some future life, a maximum of 7. So a person would have the incapability of having an eighth existence by the time they get to the first stage of enlightenment. Okay, so this is this particular chapter, chapter 25. Any questions here? Okay, I don't see any questions. Oh, Marcy, you have a question? Go ahead, ma'am.
You, Teacher David. I have noticed that the mind now, where it used to just make decisions like on the snap, on the whim, I've noticed that the mind now has a pause to it, where it now will ponder internally some questions. It's not like it's making a decision, but it's saying, wait a minute here. If this happens, then maybe that will happen, then that will happen, then maybe that will happen. But it seems to reflect, and it doesn't answer right away now. It seems to have slowed down in its decision-making process. Is that the training that the mind is starting to go through because of, I guess, investigating the Buddha teachings? Now it's trained to a point where it's now doing that for everything it wants to make decisions about or has to make decisions about?
Yes, that's a natural part of your development on the path to enlightenment, where with craving, desire, attachment, the mind is chasing those pleasant feelings. It's wanting to hurry up and get to the end of this situation so that you can get those conditioned happiness and excitement. And that's what the mind tends to do, is it's making a whole bunch of rapid and quick decisions because it's trying to hurry up and get to that. But when you understand the problem in the mind and you're starting to train your mind, you'll kind of pull that back and you'll get to the point where you're thinking through your decisions very consciously. That's what it means to move to this higher consciousness. That's what the enlightened mind is that you're moving to this higher consciousness, and part of that is thinking through your decisions because you understand the natural law of Gotama that any decision you make, it's going to produce results. And it's going to produce either a wholesome result or wholesome Gotama, or it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome Gotama. So an individual will kind of slow down their decision making, where before they might have been making a bunch of rapid decisions, and they'll think through their decisions very carefully. And then they'll implement those decisions in a way that is producing wholesome results. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll only be experiencing wholesome results. You won't be experiencing unwholesome results in your life or unwholesome Gotama. You will have extinguished all of that. But as long as your mind has craving, desire, attachment, you're not going to be able to do that. So you'll be able to slow your mind down. You'll be able to see and think through each of those decisions and then implement the best decision. And then that's what's going to help you to get to this point where you've extinguished all your unwholesome Gotama, because you're only making wise decisions every single time.
And so the internal conversation that the mind has, that's normal. That's a normal progress of this, right? That internal conversation that sits in there now.
Yeah, that's the thinking and the pondering that the Buddha talks about in the first jhana. That first jhana has the thinking and the pondering, where instead of just haphazardly going through life like we might have done in the past, you now look at the teachings, you're thinking about the teachings, you're looking at your situation and trying to figure out what would be wise and what would be unwise. And you go through that for a period of time to cultivate your wisdom, well, then eventually your mind will be fully upgraded to this new way of thinking about the world, this wisdom, that you'll be able to more readily make decisions. They still won't be fast and rapid, but you won't have as much thinking and pondering because you've already brought all that wisdom on board.
Thank you, Teacher David. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So usually what I do is I just kind of end class around this time. In the evenings on Saturdays, I also teach the same class from home at 9 p.m. And what I do is I go through all 10 chapters. But when I teach online at home for this particular class, we don't do meditation together. So we actually have enough time to do 10 chapters. Where here, we usually only have time to do about this many chapters each class. So what I'm going to do is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for being interested to learn the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you for coming to the temple and being interested to learn about what the Buddha taught and how to train your mind and how to move to this better and better existence, because it's the very best thing you could ever do is get to the point where you're peaceful and joyful and you're not causing harm to others. You can live in the world harmoniously. This is the very best thing you could do for yourself, that you could do for others, and that you could do for the entire world, is through training your mind. So I really admire people who decide that they would like to come to a place like this and learn and grow and develop and learn the teachings of the Buddha and train their mind and create a better and better life for themselves. If you guys would like to learn more, tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm going to be teaching that core central teaching of the Buddha. It's called the Eightfold Path. I'm going to walk you through this fundamental teaching that you're going to need to know in order to really get on to the path to enlightenment. So if you'd like to come tomorrow, you're more than welcome to attend that here, or you can attend it online at 9 p.m. because I teach it at home at 9 p.m. and I live stream it. And if you can't attend live, it's recorded on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook group, and we even have a podcast that you can learn it there. I've recorded it many times because I've taught it many times. I've got books and all these other things that you can learn from, even personal guidance. So if you would like help to be able to eliminate these discontent feelings, there's help available for you. And you don't need to pay anything. It's freely available to you. The books, the videos, the podcasts, the classes, the courses, the retreats, even personal guidance is here to be able to help you. So if you'd like to come talk, I'll help you get plugged into some resources if that's what you would like to do, to be able to help you to get moving on this path to enlightenment, because it's no fun to feel fear and guilt and shame and stress and anxiety. You can eliminate all of that. So if you'd like the help, there's help here for you. So whatever you decide to do for the rest of your day, enjoy, have a lovely rest of your day, and perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.